The first time Elias Ward understood he was about to become a public example, it was because the lights dimmed half a shade brighter than usual. At the Concord Academy, even the lighting had opinions. He stood at the center of the grand assembly floor, boots aligned with the thin silver circle that marked the speaker's position. Above him, tiers of delegates curved upward in a slow spiral, species arranged according to diplomatic seniority, and unofficially, how dramatic their silhouettes looked against the stars beyond the transparent hull. The gas giant outside churned in silent lightning, as if practicing applause. Elias kept his hands behind his back and focused on breathing at a pace that suggested he was neither bored nor terrified. Human neutrality, he had learned, was often misinterpreted as either defiance or a digestive problem. A soft chime resonated through the chamber. Valeth of the Thryn descended the final steps to the central platform with the calm precision of someone who had never tripped in her life and intended to keep it that way. She looked almost human, which made what followed feel personal. Tall, poised, silver-white hair drawn over one shoulder, bronze skin catching the starlight. And her ears, long, elegant, tapering back in graceful arcs, shifted slightly as she surveyed the audience, responding to frequencies Elias could not hear. They gave her expressions a second layer, like subtitles for emotions. "Esteemed delegates," she began, her voice carrying without amplification, courtesy of subtle bioresonance fields woven into her attire. "Today's symposium concerns adaptive superiority and the metrics by which we evaluate civilizational viability." Elias suspected he had just been downgraded from person to metric. A ripple of polite attention passed through the hall. A Varn cadet adjusted the gravity around his seat for comfort. A gelatinous scholar from Pell 9 rearranged herself into a more attentive cube. The Academy AI manifested as a hovering lattice of light above the upper tiers, recording everything with bureaucratic enthusiasm. Valeth turned slightly toward Elias. "As a case study, we have a representative of Homo sapiens." He offered a small nod. He considered waving, decided against it. "Humanity," Valeth continued, "is a species of remarkable persistence." A few smiles flickered. In interstellar discourse, persistence was what one said about weeds. "They possess no natural armor," she said. "No venom. No enhanced musculature beyond baseline mammalian parameters. Their neural architecture is adaptable but inefficient compared to Thryn crystalline arrays. Their lifespan is modest. Their homeworld environment is, by galactic standards, moderately hostile and aesthetically confused." A faint chuckle rose from the upper tiers. Elias resisted the urge to point out that Earth had sunsets and pizza. Both were strategic assets. "They compensate," Valeth went on, "through technological augmentation, external tools to amplify strength, exoskeletons, kinetic enhancers, autonomous war constructs." A projection flared above them, rotating holograms of human devices, from early chemical rockets to sleek modern cruisers. The older models drew more laughter than the commentary. One delegate zoomed in on a 21st-century rover and whispered something that caused his entire cluster to vibrate in amusement. "Yes," Valeth said smoothly. "They began their interstellar journey by strapping controlled explosions beneath themselves and hoping the mathematics was correct." "That's still technically the plan," Elias muttered before he could stop himself. The nearest microphones caught it. A few delegates blinked, then laughed, unexpected, genuine. Valeth's ears tilted a fraction, acknowledging the interruption without granting it victory. "Admirable candor," she said. "However, we must consider whether a species so dependent on improvisation can be entrusted with structural leadership within the Concord." There it was, not a joke, a blade wrapped in silk, the hall quieted, attention sharpening. Elias felt the weight of 100 atmospheres, none of them breathable. "Humans evolved through conflict," Valeth said. "Intraspecies warfare shaped their development, scarcity, competition, fragmentation. They are resilient, yes, but resilience born from dysfunction." A murmur of agreement passed through several tiers. Historical data scrolled briefly above. Timelines of human wars, environmental collapses, near-extinction events. The numbers were not flattering. Elias watched his own species summarized in casualty charts. He found it oddly comforting that the data was at least accurate. "Contrast this," Valeth said. "With the Thryn, we refined ourselves. We eliminated genetic instability. We harmonized governance with biological design. We do not celebrate survival after catastrophe. We prevent catastrophe." Her ears angled upward, catching the approving hum from her compatriots. Human physical strength, she continued, glancing at Elias, is inferior to Varn standards. Their cognitive processing speed is slower than Pel 9 synthetics. Their sensory range is limited. By objective measures, they are. She paused as if selecting the most diplomatic word. Primitive. The word hung in the air longer than the gas giant's lightning outside. Laughter rose, more confident now. Not cruel, precisely, but comfortable, the sound of consensus. Elias let it wash over him. He kept his posture straight, eyes forward. He thought about the first human who looked at the night sky and decided to go there anyway. He suspected that person had also been laughed at. Valith stepped closer, her shadow crossing the silver circle at his feet. Up close, he could see the faint luminescence in her eyes, like starlight caught in deep water. "Tell me, Cadet Ward," she said, her tone almost conversational, "what inherent advantage does your species claim?" He considered several answers: stubbornness, caffeine tolerance, the ability to pack bond with inanimate objects. Instead, he said, "We're hard to get rid of." A few scattered laughs, even a thrin or two. Valith's lips curved faintly. An invasive species, then. "Depends," Elias replied. "Are we in your garden, or are we both just renting space in the same universe?" That earned a sharper reaction, not outrage, interest. Before Valith could respond, the central holoscreen flickered. A thin line of static cut across the projection field, distorting the casualty charts mid-scroll. The Academy AI pulsed brighter. "Archival query detected," the AI announced, its voice smooth and entirely too pleased. Cross-referencing keywords, primitive extinction intervention. Valith's ears stilled. Elias glanced up at the flickering light. "That doesn't sound ominous at all," he said quietly. The laughter this time was uneasy. Above them, the projection shifted. Star maps replaced statistics, coordinates from centuries past. A system marked in urgent red. The hall began to fall silent, one tier at a time, as if someone were lowering the volume of the galaxy. Elias felt rather than saw Valith's attention sharpen beside him. For the first time since she had begun speaking, she did not look entirely certain. The lights dimmed another fraction, not brighter this time, just deeper. The star map rotated slowly above the assembly floor, red markers pulsing in a rhythm that felt disturbingly biological. Elias squinted at the coordinates. Even without being a navigation specialist, he recognized the system designation. Thrin Prime, date stamp, 312 standard cycles ago. A thin strand of static cleared and the Academy AI spoke again, far less cheerful. "Accessing sealed Conquered archive, clearance level Obsidian. Authorization source, semantic trigger cascade." "Semantic trigger cascade?" Elias murmured, "so we offended the computer into honesty." A few nervous laughs answered him. No one was comfortable enough to laugh loudly. Valith did not look at him. Her gaze was fixed on the projection, her long ears angled forward, rigid, as if straining to hear something beneath the silence. The star map dissolved into fragmented transmissions, emergency beacons. Distress calls layered over one another in overlapping frequencies. Thrin voices, sharp with static. Orbital grid compromised. Swarm density increasing. Atmospheric harvesters deployed. The audio cut into bursts of interference. A new image stabilized, a field of dark metallic forms blotting out a sun. The machines swarm. Self-replicating constructs, each unit feeding on stellar energy and planetary mass, multiplying with mechanical indifference. A Varn delegate shifted in his seat. "We studied this conflict," he said quietly. "The Thrin repelled the incursion." The AI responded, "Correction. Thrin military resistance probability at final projection, 37%. A murmur rippled outward. Valith's jaw tightened. "Continue," she said. The projection zoomed inward toward the Thrin homeworld. Defensive satellites flared and vanished. Planetary shields flickered under sustained bombardment. Statistical overlays streamed beside the images. Population density, evacuation capacity, extinction forecasts climbing with ruthless precision. Extinction probability at T-48 standard hours. 82%, the AI intoned. Someone in the upper tiers whispered a curse in a language Elias did not know. Then another signature appeared at the edge of the system, multiple warp apertures tearing open in uneven formation. Vessel classifications scrolled into view. Human. Elias blinked. "Well," he said softly, "that's new." The hall was utterly silent now. The projection clarified into the image of a human fleet. If fleet, was the correct term for a collection of ships that looked as though they had been assembled by committee during an argument. Hull plating mismatched, heat signatures irregular, several vessels broadcasting internal damage warnings before even entering combat range. Audio logs overlaid the image. Admiral Rao to all civilian craft. Jump coordinates uploaded. You have one chance, take it. Another voice, younger, attempting levity. If anyone survives this, drinks are on me, which is financially irresponsible given the odds. Scattered, incredulous laughter echoed through the present-day chamber. It died quickly. The battle unfolded in accelerated segments. Human ships diving toward the swarm's central mass. Kinetic projectiles slamming into machine hulls. Nuclear detonations blooming too close to friendly vessels. One cruiser ruptured under return fire, yet altered its trajectory at the last second to collide directly with a cluster of control nodes. Impact confirmed, the AI narrated. Swarm coordination efficiency reduced by 12%. Another transmission crackled through. Engineering reports reactor containment failure. Can you stabilize? Negative. A pause, then overcharge it. Elias swallowed. The projection showed the ship's core spiking beyond safe limits, the vessel accelerating straight into the densest region of the swarm. A white flare swallowed the frame. Electromagnetic pulse generated, the AI said. Swarm units disabled within radius, 31%. On the planetary surface below, Thryn evacuation convoys lifted into orbit through temporary corridors carved by human firepower. Valith's voice was very quiet. How many? Human fleet initial count, 84 vessels, the AI replied. Surviving vessels after engagement, 9. Casualty estimate, 2-3 million. The number seemed too large to fit inside the hall. It pressed against the curved walls, searching for an exit. A delegate from Pel 9 recalibrated its vocal modulator. Historical Thryn records indicate an Allied intervention, it said. No species identified. Identification suppressed under Concord Resolution 77A, the AI responded. Petition submitted by Thryn High Council. Justification, preservation of cultural sovereignty. All eyes turned toward Valith. For a moment she did not move. Her ears, once poised with elegant certainty, now angled slightly downward. The resolution, she said slowly, was framed as a temporary seal, a measure to prevent societal destabilization during Reconstruction. And it lasted 3 centuries. Elias asked, unable to keep the edge from his voice. Then he exhaled. Sorry, that sounded accusatory. I'm still processing the part where we apparently rammed a robot apocalypse. A few delegates let out strained breaths that almost resembled laughter. The projection shifted to a final transmission. A human captain, face smudged with soot, eyes bright with something between fear and exhilaration. To any Thryn command still receiving this, she said, you've got a window, it won't last long. Use it, and if we don't make it, she hesitated, then grinned. Try not to name anything ugly after us. The recording ended in static. Silence followed. Not the earlier silence of expectation, but a heavier one, dense with recalculation. Elias looked up at the frozen image of the burning fleet. I didn't know, he said quietly. This isn't exactly covered in our orientation pamphlets. Valith finally turned toward him. There was no mockery left in her expression. Only something raw and unguarded, nor in ours. The AI continued, almost apologetically. Post-conflict analysis credits human electromagnetic detonation strategy with reducing extinction probability from 82% to 14% within 6 standard hours. A Varn cadet let out a low whistle. Primitive, he muttered, but the word had lost its earlier flavor. Elias rubbed the back of his neck. For the record, I would like it known that current human doctrine strongly discourages flying directly into existential threats. We prefer paperwork now. That earned a ripple of genuine laughter, small but real. The tension fractured just enough to let air in. Valith stepped closer to the projection, her gaze tracing the outlines of the human vessels. Why, she asked softly, would they do this? The Thryn were not formal allies at the time. Elias considered. We have a bad habit, he said. When someone sends out a distress signal, we answer, even if it's strategically unwise. Especially if it's strategically unwise. Another delegate spoke from the upper tier. The Thryn High Council voted to seal this record by a margin of 1. The words settled like dust. Valith's ears twitched faintly. I was taught, she said almost to herself, that our survival was inevitable, that our superiority ensured it. Elias looked at the image of the exploding human cruiser. "Nothing's inevitable," he replied. "We just try anyway." Above them, the star map remained, no longer pulsing red. The machine swarm icons were dimmed, marked as neutralized. Beside them, in small script, a new annotation flickered into place as the archive updated its own index. Human intervention, decisive. The hall did not laugh this time, it listened. No one applauded when the archive finished. Applause would have implied performance. This felt more like confession. Valith stepped forward until she stood within the silver circle beside Elias. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. The Academy AI dimmed its projection, but did not dismiss it, as if unwilling to pretend it had imagined the whole thing. "When I was a child," Valith began, her voice steady but stripped of ornament, "I visited the memorial spire on Thrin Prime. I was told it honored those who resisted the swarm. I remember asking why the name stopped so abruptly." She paused. "I was told the rest were lost to corrupted data." A faint, bitter curve touched her lips. "It appears the corruption was administrative." A restrained ripple of laughter moved through the hall, grateful for the release. She turned to face the assembly. "Delegates of the conquered, I stand corrected, publicly, thoroughly, and I suspect historically." Her long ears angled downward, then slowly lifted again, not in pride but in resolve. "The Thrin owe their continued existence to a species I described as primitive. We sealed the record to protect our dignity. In doing so, we compromised it." The words did not tremble, that made them heavier. Elias shifted his weight. "For the record," he said, "humans are extremely familiar with compromising our own dignity. We have entire networks dedicated to it." A few startled laughs broke free. Even a Thrin delegate allowed a brief, startled exhale. Valith inclined her head to him. "Your ancestors demonstrated a capacity my people mistook for recklessness. You call it answering a distress signal. We called it unsustainable altruism." She faced the hall again. It was, in truth, courage. The Academy Council's presiding arbiter rose from the highest tier. "Resolution 77A will be brought to immediate review," the arbiter announced. "Pending unanimous consent, the archival seal shall be lifted." "Unanimous," Elias muttered, "no pressure." One by one, authorization glyphs flared across the chamber as delegates signaled assent. Varn, Pel 9, Kethari. Even the smaller protectorates whose votes rarely altered anything significant. The final glyph belonged to the Thrin delegation. Valith did not hesitate. "Seal revoked," the AI confirmed. Archive reclassified as open historical record. Curriculum updates initiated across conquered educational networks. A soft wave of transmitted notifications rippled outward, billions of devices across worlds receiving the same update. History adjusting itself in real time. Elias let out a slow breath he had not realized he was holding. "My grandmother is going to be very confused," he said. "She thought our biggest contribution to galactic politics was coffee." "Coffee remains strategically significant," a Pel 9 scholar interjected solemnly, prompting genuine laughter this time. Valith turned to Elias fully. "Cadet Ward," she said, and there was no trace of condescension left in the title. "On behalf of the Thrin people, I offer formal gratitude." She lowered herself to one knee. The motion sent a visible shock through the chamber. Thrin did not kneel outside sacred ritual. Elias stared at her for half a second too long before stepping forward awkwardly. "You really don't have to," he began, then stopped. This was not about his comfort. He extended his hand instead. After a brief hesitation, she took it and rose. "We helped because we could," he said quietly. "That's not leverage, it's just policy." "Then it is a policy worthy of emulation," Valith replied. The presiding arbiter cleared its throat. "In light of these revelations, the Council proposes a joint initiative, a conquered rapid response corps, multi-species, dedicated to answering distress signals without regard to political calculus." A murmur of interest swept the hall. Elias raised a brow. "You're suggesting we institutionalize heroic bad decisions." "Refine them," Valith corrected, "with better planning." "Ah, so fewer explosions." "No," she said, a faint glint returning to her eyes. "More efficient explosions." The laughter that followed was warm, no longer edged with ridicule. The arbiter continued. "Cadet Ward and Cadet Valith are hereby assigned as inaugural liaisons to the Corps Development Committee." Elias blinked. "I was hoping for something low profile, perhaps library duty." You triggered an obsidian archive with sarcasm, Valeth said. You forfeited low profile. He considered that fair. As the assembly began to disperse, delegates approached in small clusters. Some offered formal acknowledgments. Others asked practical questions about human electromagnetic detonation strategies. One Varn requested clarification on the structural integrity of jar-opening devices, which Elias promised to forward in a detailed report. Hours later, the amphitheater was nearly empty. The gas giant still churned beyond the hull, indifferent and magnificent. Valeth stood beside Elias at the edge of the central platform. I believed strength meant never needing rescue, she said. I see now that strength may also mean accepting it and offering it in turn. Elias nodded. We used to think strength meant winning. Took us a while to figure out surviving together works better. She studied him for a moment. You did not defend your species when I mocked it. I didn't need to, he replied. Truth has better timing than I do. A brief silence settled, but it was no longer heavy. Will you resent us? She asked. He shook his head. Resentment's inefficient, and apparently we're starting a core dedicated to efficiency. Her ears angled upward in something like amusement. Then we begin again, without omission. Without omission, he agreed. A notification chimed softly at his wrist console. Incoming messages, hundreds then thousands. Human networks reacting to the unsealed archive. Shock, pride, grief for names long forgotten now resurfacing. He felt the weight of it, but it did not bend him. It steadied him. Looks like we have work to do, he said. Yes, Valeth replied, together. They walked from the silver circle side by side, no longer example and examiner, but partners assigned to the same uncertain future. Behind them, the Academy AI finalized its records, annotating the day's proceedings with a simple tag. Conquered Doctrine Amendment, Strength Redefined. The hall did not echo with laughter now. It did not need to. The silence that remained was not ignorance, nor embarrassment. It was understanding. And from that understanding, something enduring had begun.